Welcome to the Information Commissioner's Office. If you want to use our Welsh language service, please press 9. If not, please hold.
Good afternoon, Information Commissioner's Office helpline. How can I help?
Hi, who am I speaking to, please? Hi,
Hi.
do you have a surname at all?
Yes, it's...
How do you spell that?
It's...
Okay. My name's... I've got quite a bag of concerns and complaints, really. But I'm going to break it down as best I can. We'll start with the most recent, and then obviously we can backtrack and you'll see where it's all coming from. Okay, so do you need any information from me before?
No, just tell me what your concern's about.
Okay, I'm a vulnerable carer for my autistic son. I've got a court order that says I must have my children every weekend. Now, apparently, during the court process, my former partner didn't turn up for any of the court sessions, even though she was given notice. There's some issues with regards to the way she's been dealing with the situation in court. But anyway, I was given like shared care, but I have all the expenses that I have myself to obviously deal with when I'm taking care of the children.
Sure.
Yeah, I have 3 children in total. One of them has autism, but they're quite a handful anyway. So I have the court order, but it appears that my former partner has gone to the CSA without my consent and used my name, made a false claim against me, without it being means tested and without a health and safety check. There was no risk assessment, and nobody bothered to tell me there's been no discussion in the matter. The next thing I know is I received 2 letters. One is my wage slip with deductions in it, and my company that I work for, which is never bothered to contact me or ask for permission. Also, the child maintenance service, which is a service, and it's a public service as well, without consent has made this application and deducted money from my wages. Well, this has caused several problems now. Not least of all, I won't be able to afford to either be in work, but it's also causing me to be at risk of being made homeless. Now, obviously, the child maintenance service is under direct ministerial control of the Secretary of State of the Department of Work and Pensions. Now, the Department of Work and Pensions has, for quite some time, been making unlawful deductions and refusing to give responses to my notices that have been given, therefore tacitly agreed, between the private parties, not least of all the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, including the predecessor. However, they've continued to make these unlawful deductions, and based on the amount that they claim, that they calculate and refuse to take into account my circumstances and my needs and my vulnerable needs, they've basically left me in a position where I'm unable to afford to live, which is unlawful. Not only that, they've made it unfavourable conditions at work, which again is a human rights breach. It appears that they keep sending me threatening letters, and then when I question that letter, I'm bombarded with multiple letters, all that contradict each other. My MP actually has some of them, and I'm going to be starting the process, but I need you guys obviously on board now, because I think this has gone too far and really needs to be unravelled and taken back to the source, which was the DWP and now the Child Maintenance Service, which is under direct, or both of which are under direct ministerial control by the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, which I believe is Amber Rudd, yeah? So, like I say, she's going to be getting some notices shortly. However, very concerned about the apparent misuse of my private data without consent. There's been no risk assessment, and it's clear that the DWP has direct live feed from HMRC. However, I seem to be on either the wrong tax codes all the time, and then I have to phone up and get that resolved. And then as soon as that's resolved, then something else is happening, and something else is happening, and it's just becoming a total bombardment, you know. It's actually causing me alarm and distress. It appears as blackmail and harassment. It's not helping me to keep my job. It's actually risking my job, risking my health, risking my home, breaking a court order. It all appears to be an attempt to pervert the course of justice. Because obviously they don't have the authority to cause me harms or wrongs or injuries or losses. And I'm now at the point where they've damaged me, and they've caused my employer to breach the contract that I have with them. Not only that, based on the minimum wage, I'm now in receipt of less than the minimum wage for the hours that I'm working, which again breaks the contract that I have with them. And there seems to be this incorrect idea that is not lawful, that the DWP can do anything it likes, when clearly it can't. And it's made a huge, no, I wouldn't even say an assumption. I would say it appears as malicious, because they have lots of information at their disposal to make the correct calculations. I've just received a statement for this month's universal credit, which again, I think universal credit is failing and is causing unlawful damages to myself. It's clearly demonstrable that none of my problems existed before universal credit and sanctions to my benefit. I actually have a court tribunal order that overturned the decision of the Secretary of State from 2012, and they still refused to give me my benefits. Now, as you know, every case is based on its own merit. They falsely and misleadingly gave me misleading information throughout, continued to bully and harass me, tried to exclude me unlawfully. Well, they did exclude me unlawfully from the service, from access to it. Then these problems continued. I tried to basically escape the persecution by going on to New Enterprise Allowance. That was in 2013-14. Again, I was misled and given wrong advice regarding what benefits I'll be in receipt of. Because it says on the New Enterprise Allowance website, I still think it says it on there today, that any money you receive will not affect your housing benefit, council tax benefit, all the other benefits that you're entitled to. However, it did. And so I was misinformed. I didn't understand what they was talking about. They've changed the rules to suit themselves, even though it clearly says any money you make. So then they've been claiming overpayments for all sorts of things. And again, all of those need investigating, because the DWP, quite frankly, is not a competent witness, and therefore doesn't have subject matter jurisdiction. And they could never have subject matter jurisdiction. So all of their actions would be unlawful.
So all of these concerns that you have you addressed them in writing with the DWP?
I have, multiple times, and they've been ignoring me. So,
and when was the last time you raised this with them?
Well, I've now sent a copy to my MP. My MP's dealing with it, so she would have received another letter yesterday. But I spoke to her about 2 weeks ago. She sent off one letter, during which time they did another recalculation and sent 3 letters on with the same date on it, all with different information. One of them just said, where it would have figures, it just said text, 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 text in every box. I'm just confused. The advice section was different numbers of pages, which clearly there's different amounts of advice being given. That doesn't seem right. The fact that I'm feeling harassed by it, and I'm not being helped by the service, and the fact that all of these are hindering my progress and my ability to work. Because it all needs addressing. I can't just continue work. And at the same time, the DWP sends threatening letters that if I lose my job, if I leave my job, they're going to sanction me for 3 years. Well, they're actually sabotaging my job. They're sabotaging my ability to go to work. They're sabotaging my ability to look after my children. They're sabotaging my natural life. It's a human rights breach, quite clearly. And it appears that I'm going to have to take it to the Queen's Bench High Court to get this matter dealt with, but also they'll probably want an investigation from you guys as to what's going on with this data fraud, because the amount of times that I wrote to them to get these matters sorted, and they've basically fobbed me off, and it's, to me, I believe it's unlawful. They have indemnity insurance, or they should have indemnity insurance in case I am damaged, and clearly I've been damaged throughout the process. And it's not just limited to this one incident. That's the thing. And I think that this is why so much has been happening, because really it unravels a whole can of worms.
Sure. So you can complain to us about all these issues. The only thing we'll need is all the correspondence you've sent them regarding this, and anything you've received from them regarding this as well. If you prefer, your MP can submit the complaint to us on your behalf. That's up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Well, since she's got some of the information as well, and she's been involved in the process, it would be helpful, I think, because you're only going to have to refer back to her anyway.
Yeah, so she can do it on your behalf. She'll just need a letter of authority or something to say that you give consent for her to talk to us about this, basically. But otherwise, yeah, she can submit a complaint for you. Yeah.
Obviously, something I want to confirm as well: the rights of the data subject, number 709. Now, the 6 data protection principles. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One of them. In fact, I'll just bring it up now and I'll confirm it with you so that we're all on the same page here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Rights of the Data Subject, Data Protection Act, number 709. Personal data shall be processed in accordance with the rights of the data subject under this Act. This is the 6th data protection principle and the rights of the individuals that it refers to. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask a quick question? Are you legally trained?
Sure. We're trained on data protection legislation, but nothing else. So we're not lawyers or...
Okay. Right, so... Okay, the 6th data protection principle and the rights of the individuals that it refers to are a right to claim compensation for damages caused by a breach of the Act. Mm-hmm. 7 principles. Data users need consent for data being used before any processing of personal data. Number 1. Is that correct?
So they won't always need your consent. There's different lawful basis in the legislation for them, for any organization to use your data, so it won't necessarily be consent.
Sorry, say that again.
I was just saying, it won't, an organization, when they're processing your personal data, they won't necessarily need your consent to process it. There's other lawful bases they can rely on to process your personal data.
Right, well, data users, the second one, are required to notify you in writing of purposes for collecting data, and data subjects have the right to request access and correction of personal data. So that wasn't done. Disclosure principle, data user is not allowed to disclose personal data to any third party without consent of the data subject. Again, is not CSA, it's a separate service, or the child maintenance service, and it's not the DWP. It is a third party, and they did not get consent from the data subject, which is me. The 4th security principle.
They don't necessarily need your consent either to share your data. They need a lawful basis in the legislation, but there's 5 other lawful bases other than consent.
I don't agree with that, especially if they're not competent witness to the facts. They don't have subject matter jurisdiction. That would contradict what you're saying there.
Well, I can only advise as to what's in data protection legislation, and it does say that when you're processing personal data, so when an organization is processing personal data, so that can be sharing it.
So data
with
protection
another
legislation,
organization.
does that that's an act or a statute, isn't it?
So that's a European law.
What country are we in?
We're in the UK.
And what law do we have here?
Well, there's both European law and British law.
British law? Never heard of that.
English law.
Yeah, I've heard of English law. That's the only law of the land that I know of.
Well, in terms of data protection, it's the European law and the English law.
Is this Europe?
Sorry?
Is this Europe?
Well, the UK is still part of the European Union.
Since when?
So for now, it's...
I thought it was given royal assent already. I mean, it says on all the government websites that get ready for Brexit.
Yeah, but until we've actually left the European Union, the European law still applies.
Okay, but even still, the human rights laws of Europe would tend to agree that if I've got nothing to live on, and that's substandard and subpar to what I need to receive to live on, the minimum I need to live, it's quite clear, isn't it?
Yes,
but again, those are acts and statutes again, aren't they? And they require the consent of the governed to be made lawful. So, it sounds to me that they don't really have permission from me, and causing me damages is wrongful and harmful and dangerous, and that's a health and safety risk. Yeah, so the security principle we get onto, funnily enough, because safety and security. Data users need to take steps to protect personal data from any loss. Any loss. Well, I've got losses that are demonstrable. Misuse. Yeah. Modification. Well, clearly the first letter they sent me has changed now. Unauthorized or accidental access or disclosure. Well, again, that's what we're talking about. It wasn't authorized by me between either myself or the employer that I work for. You know, my private contract with them has basically been infringed, and that's unlawful. Alteration or destruction. So again, they've altered it, and that's clear from the documents they have. Are you following me so far?
Yeah.
Section 5, retention, data retention principle. Personal data cannot be kept longer than is necessary to fulfill original purposes it was obtained by data user. Well, again, how did they obtain this information? Because it wasn't from me. It was from someone who's not a competent witness and someone who's not authorized to use my privately copywritten name. The 6th data integrity principle. Data users need to take reasonable steps to ensure the accuracy and currency of data subject personal data in their keep. Is that true?
Yes. They need
Okay,
to keep
so
the data accurate.
they've not taken reasonable steps, really, have they? Because they didn't ensure it.
Like it.
What does ensure mean?
Sorry?
What does ensure mean?
Make sure that the data is accurate, I assume.
Is that the legal meaning of that word?
Ensure?
Yeah.
I would assume. But...
Well, we can't assume, can we? We have to break all this down, because this is what I'm saying. I don't think they know what they're talking about. Because they've not taken reasonable steps to ensure the accuracy and currency of data.
Yeah.
And whose data is it? It's mine. It's private, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they private servants or public servants?
Public servants.
So do they have any lawful standing in the private capacity?
No.
I don't think they do they? Anyway, the 7th, access principle. Data subjects should be given access to personal data and shall be able to make corrections to any inaccurate and or incomplete information. Is that true?
Yes.
So again, these are things that I'm asking for. They've got inaccurate data, and they're not going to be able to get all of it. And some of it is covered by a non-disclosure agreement, which they don't have any privilege to access. Not unless they want to change, the law, and make it that anything that is undisclosed must therefore be disclosed. If they want to set a precedent in law, I'm sure people have got plenty of questions they'd like to ask. So I'll review that again. Data users need consent for data being used before any processing. They need it. Need consent before any processing of personal data. They didn't have my consent. They used hearsay. They don't have a court document. And the merit of what they're claiming is actually damaging. So there is no merit. What it appears to be is an attempt to damage my relationship with my children, number one. And that seems to be coming from my ex-partner, at the very least. She had every opportunity to come into the court if she had a disagreement. She had every opportunity to come into the court and, state her case. But she didn't have a case. That is, as it appears malicious. It appears to be her undermining the court order she was given, because it says clearly in the court order she must allow access. But if she's attempting to sabotage the means and doing it unlawfully without knowledge of my personal circumstances, without a risk assessment, she is not me. She's not authorised to speak for me.
Yeah.
So she's broken the Data Protection Act, and the Child Maintenance Service having these obligations to protect me has failed to protect me, and appears to have a conflict of interest with the Department of Work and Pensions, also having all these debts that they've misused my name for, and they've not made corrections, even though they've been ordered by a court order to make those corrections and to stop sanctioning me. They're trying to invent new methods of sanctioning me, new methods of taxation, hidden ways of claiming back money for themselves, and acting as if that's in the best interest of my children, and clearly it isn't. The court agrees the children need a father. The court and the law agrees that I have every right to uphold my duties and to be helped and assisted by those public servants who serve the public, and I just happen to be a member of the public. And I'm hoping now that we can resolve this quickly, swiftly, and so I can just get on with my life, and that my children aren't damaged by it too much, because as it stands, it's measurable damage. I could clearly demonstrate numbers that are not the same, numbers that were agreed to that I'm not getting, and irrelevant to whether this government is doing whatever, they're not God. They're not above the law. Even the king is subject to the law. We got that in Magna Carta. This is why we have a constitution, but you have to recognise the fullness of the common law and how it operates, and the limitations of the powers that the government truly has. They don't seem to be limiting themselves, they seem to be limiting me, and that's unlawful.
Well, so as I said, just have your MP bring the complaint to us and we'll assess the data protection issues.
Right, I will do. If I wanted to do it myself as well, or to co-author, as it were, because some of the things I may agree with the way the MP is presenting that information, and some of it I may not agree.
Sure.
I will still do that, obviously. I'm quite competent and capable. I'm not incompetent in my capacity. However, given the fact that I have been made to be unable to work by the Department of Work and Pensions, who are now going to make another false claim. I want this incident logged, and I want this contact that we've had today logged. Have you been making notes, by the way?
I can't. It's a confidential helpline.
Okay, well, I've made my own.
Okay.
Obviously, I make records all the time. So, in terms of what we said about the 7 data protection principles and the rights of data subjects, are we in agreement that with what I said?
Well, besides the consent, yes, we're in agreement.
Besides the consent, what about the consent do you not agree with?
They don't necessarily need your consent to process your personal data.
They don't necessarily need my consent. Well, then that kind of overwrites everything else, doesn't it? That just doesn't sound right at all. That surely no one is above the law. We just agreed that. Even the king is subject to the law. The king can't be made king without the law. Can he?
Sure, but
right. So he's not beyond the law. He's subject to it, isn't he?
Yeah, of course.
Or is he allowed to behave unlawfully and damage people? What would you say to that?
No, he's not allowed to.
He's the king. Can he just come in your cupboards and take your food?
Well, no, of course.
Can he just walk through your front door and sit down?
The issue.
He's the king, though, isn't he? He's got all them people telling him and making us all think and believe that he's more important than the rest of us. But is he a servant also? Is he a public servant? Serving the public need and the public good? He would have to be, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Otherwise, his whole everything disappears. His position. So this is what I'm saying. Do I have a right to claim compensation for damages caused by any breach of the Act?
Yes, you do. We don't handle that part of it, though,
right.
but you can.
So I have that right to claim it?
Yes.
Right. But you're telling me they don't need consent?
Not necessarily, no.
Do you not think that conflicts with your position?
Sorry?
Do you not think that conflicts with your position?
Why?
Because there doesn't seem to be a list of exceptions or exemptions within the Act.
There is. There's a list of lawful bases besides consent, and there's a list of exemptions as well.
Well, again, they'd have to notify me of all of that, wouldn't they? And I'd have to understand it. And if I don't understand it or I don't agree to it, then what?
Yeah, no, they have to inform you regardless. Yeah.
What if they didn't get informed consent?
So it depends. If they're relying on consent to process your personal data, then obviously they would have to give you all the information.
Right, so what if it breaks another court order? What if it breaks another court order without the due process of law being followed?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to advise in this case. At least I can only tell you that in data protection, consent is one of the lawful bases they can rely on, but there's others if they're relying on consent. But regardless of the lawful basis they're relying on, they need to give you all the information regarding what they're doing with your personal data.
Right. Is the Secretary of State insured?
I don't know.
Do they have to be to be in that capacity, to act in that capacity? Do they have to have indemnity insurance?
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Okay. Well, in standard cases that you've dealt with or other people have dealt with, when a claim has been made for compensation, how has that been processed?
So we don't handle claims for compensation. You need to seek legal advice and pursue it through the legal system.
Okay, so what is your primary function then? What do you do?
We assess whether there's been a breach of the legislation, of data protection legislation, and then we decide whether we need to take some enforcement action as a result.
Right. So when something, as a matter of fact, demonstratable by the facts, and having the competent witness there, obviously. When that damage has occurred and an unlawful act or result has occurred as a result of something that you say they don't need consent, but in this instance where consent was not given, nor was it informed, nor was it accurate, and there's plenty of other principles that were also not complied with. You're saying, well, how would you assess that? Because I mean, unlawful damages occurred as a result of some other action.
So our assessment will make it based on the communication you give us, and then we will write to the organization you're complaining about, and after that we'll make an assessment. And yeah, that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, in terms of what you would then present, would you present your findings in a report? How would I get that information? Would it be in writing?
Yes, you'll get an assessment. Yes, you'll get an assessment in writing, and then you can use that assessment as evidence as part of a court case, for example, if you wanted to.
Okay, and how long is that likely to take?
At the moment, we've got quite a heavy workload, so in average it takes 3 months for complaints to be allocated to a case officer. Then it's usually quite fast, within a few weeks.
Okay. Is any of that process involving the court at all? On your side, I mean.
No.
So it's just
not
your
usually.
And are you an independent organisation?
Yes.
Okay, so who do you answer to in your chain of command, as it were?
Me personally, or?
Well, yeah, if you want to start there.
Well, we've got, I suppose a normal organization setting. So we've got managers in my department, but your complaint will go to the complaints department. If you've got an issue with the complaint, you can complain to us first, and it will be assessed by a manager in the complaints department. And then if you still disagree, you can take it. So if you disagree, if you have an issue with the service we provided, you can go to the Parliament and Health Services Ombudsman, the PHSO. And
did you say Parliament?
Parliamentary and Health Services Ombudsman.
Okay.
And if you have an issue with the decision that we made, you can go to the courts at that point.
Is it essential that I use your service before making the application to the court, or have it ongoing at the same time? Because the court process sometimes takes some time.
Yeah, so it's entirely up to you. I would advise you to start with us because, as I said, we do have quite a heavy workload. So it's better if you get our assessment first if you want to use it in court.
Right, because here's the thing: 3 months of breaking a court order is going to be extremely damaging to my children. My son has autism, and he needs consistency. He needs routine. Which again, the actions of my former partner combined with these other agencies really doesn't make sense, because when they're going to be asked all these questions, the same questions, and plenty more, it's going to be extremely embarrassing for them, at the least. Because I don't think it's really forgivable what's been going on, and for how long it's been going on, for how long they've tried to deny me my rights and my duties by doing other things. And as this process begins, your department's going to find out just how much it's been affecting me, my family, my ability to live. If I become homeless as well during the process, because that seems to be the intention of what the DWP is operating. People need to be extremely aware that that is an unlawful act, and they're not obliged to comply with it. Because in complying with it, then we have a situation where the government acting unlawfully and with no remedy to remove dangerous people, as it were, operating dangerously. How can we deal with that? Especially if the whistleblowers, everyone that has because it takes time to get the information. Something has to happen before you can then respond. Correct?
Yes. So we write. So we write to the organization in question.
Yeah.
And then they respond to us, and afterwards we make the assessment. Yeah.
So when you're trying to work, and you're taking care of children, and then all of a sudden, because you're trying to live, you have to make a complaint. All of a sudden, everybody wants to complain about you and make money claims, and it's always money. Money is the love of money. Is the root of all evil. And it appears to me that one, they know I haven't got any money. Two, they're fraudulently misusing my information, and it seems to be involving other agencies. Because, like I say, Royal Mail is not a government agency; it's its own separate private thing. And so they've gone to that private thing and messed up my contract. They've broken my contract basically that I have with the work. They promised me this amount of money for that amount of hours. And now I'm not getting that. And they're determining what my children need, which is contrary to a court order. It seems that everything's on its head right now. It seems everything is imploding, and, they can't even make an arrangement between themselves and Europe based on the will of the people. And that appears to be, intentional. A lot of it appears to be intentional, to be honest. And it's extremely damaging. And we have a situation where you're busy, everybody's busy, because there's so many complaints being made. I think at some stage we have to start realising that what they're doing is wrong. And just because they say, oh, no, we're not in that. Sorry, but they're human beings. If the king is subject to the law, so are they. Otherwise, what's the remedy when they're doing criminal things like that? Because they haven't remedied it. Even though I've wrote to them hundreds of times, they've not settled and zeroed the accounts. They've continued to insist some legislation that I don't understand and I don't subscribe to, because it requires the consent of the governed to be made lawful. It's not on me, it's on them. They're the ones with the office. And I'm sure if we look at their oaths of office, memorandums and articles of association, it will agree that they're not allowed to cause any harm. And if that is the case, then the whole trust of it would have to be shut down. And we wouldn't have a government. Then how will we function?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
I do.
Right. It's a very dangerous, risky situation, and it appears to me some of these people are corrupted by their power, and there's no excuse for setting principles that are the principle of doing a good thing and then saying, but we can break it. Well, how can you break it? Why can you break it? That doesn't make any sense. That just sounds like Goebbels going and telling the rest of the SS, shoot them people around the corner. It's okay because I said so. At some point, someone looking at that has to go, you know what, I'm not doing that. You want that doing, you do that yourself. Stop following orders. Especially orders that cause unlawful harm.
Well, let's just bring it to us as a complaint, and we'll assess the data protection issues. Right?
So in terms of bringing it to you as a complaint, is my MP going to email you directly? Because I'll also be sending a copy of everything I send to my MP to you, so you'll be getting at least 2 copies of the same thing.
Okay.
But that's just from my point of view, for my own peace of mind, but also to ensure that my MP is also in herself doing her job. Because, when they're all part of the same family, same job description, I need to understand that they really know their job, because if they're just going into this thing, they've never been a government before, some people. They've just got in there and they're learning as they go along. So if they're in this culture of, we all just follow this guy because he seems to know what he's doing, but actually he doesn't. It's dangerous again, and that's why risk assessments have to be done. The fact that the whole thing that should have been done has not been done should be make alarm bells ring, and the fact that the DWP is making assessments, I don't know how they've reached this assessment. They said I've been paid £650. Actually, no, I haven't. I've only received about £300 and odd because they took about £300 off me. And that's put me in a position where I can't get to work now. I've been taking care of my children. I've been doing the best that I can, but the cost of living is exorbitant. And that's why we have a minimum amount you need to live. Making deductions from the minimum amount you need to live, what's the intention of that? If the law already says that's the minimum you need to live, therefore I can't live, can I? I wouldn't be alive.
Yeah.
So therefore that's the intention, to cause death to somebody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is unlawful.
Hopefully we'll be able to help you with that. So
Absolutely.
just the next thing you need to do is just send us an email with everything, and then.
Do you have an email address, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's casework.
Casework.
At ico.org.uk.
Is that all in lowercase?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So casework.
Just make sure, casework at ico.org.uk. Just make sure that you get an acknowledgement email back from us for every email that you send us. That will confirm that we've got it and it's in the system.
Right, no problem, I will do. Thank you very much. Okay, it's going to be quite a long one because, again, you know how the government likes to write 50,000 pages when all of that is just to hide the devil in the detail.
Sure. If you've got a lot of attachments, send it over several emails just to make sure that we get them.
I will do.
All right.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thanks. All right, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Very interesting conversation, wouldn't you say?